Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Nohasina Masara binti Imam Azamani with matrix number S55146. I want to do the individual assignment 1 regarding the students' digital skills using Microsoft Visio. And the question I want to do is question C. Prepare a document flowchart to document accounts payable processing at SNS. Before we do the flowchart, we have to understand the case. Ashton Fleming has decided to document and analyze the accounts payable process at SNS, so the transition to a computerized system will be easier. He also hopes to improve any weaknesses he discovers in the system. In the following narrative, Ashton explains what happens at SNS. After that, we have to identify the internal or external agents in the narrative, in the case. So in the narrative, in the paragraph 1, we know that it is involved the account payable department. So the first internal agent is the account payable department. Second is it's forward all the document to Ashton. So the second internal agent is Ashton, and the third is Susan. So after that, we move to the Microsoft Visio to draw the column, and the column, and we have to draw three column involving the three internal agents. So the topic is S because we want to do the SNS account payable, so we write it as SNS accounts payable. Like I said just now, the first column, the first internal agent is accounts payable. Second is Ashton. Because Ashton is in between the account payable department and Susan, so we write Ashton as a controller. And after that, Susan is the owner or manager. Done with the internal agent, so we move to the narrative. Back to the narrative. Before SNS pays a vendor invoice, the invoice must be matched against the purchase order used to request the goods and the receiving report that the receiving department prepares. This is before SNS pays the vendor invoice. So we must KIV this first. So we move to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 lines. The sentence in the line 5, the purchase order that are forwarded from purchasing are stored in a purchase order file. As we know, the purchase order is forward from the purchasing department. So we have to start with the terminal symbols, and these symbols, the purpose of the symbol is meaning that it is the beginning of the process. We take the symbol and we name it as from purchasing. Okay, the purchasing department forward the purchase order. The purchase order is the purchase order that we know is in the document. Purchase order is a document, so we have to forward the purchase order in a document symbol. The purchase order. After that, the purchase order is stored in a purchase order file. So the data stored is in purchase order file. And it store all of these documents enter the accounts payable department at the different times. So a separate alphabetical file is kept for each type of document. So the purchase order document is stored in purchase order file as in alphabetical file. The symbol of the data stores file is the triangle symbol. And you might name it as A. Okay, back to our narrative. The receiving report are stored in a receiving report file. So we know that before we receive the receiving report, the receiving department forwarded the receiving report first. In this, prepares the receiving report from the receiving departments. So the terminal is receiving department. For receiving, we forward the receiving report. So the receiving report is in a document. Sorry. After that, file in a receiving report file. And file it alphabetically. Put it as A. Okay, next next is the vendor invoice. The vendor invoice we receive from the vendor. Receive for the vendor. Start with the vendor. From vendor, receive the vendor invoice, and vendor invoice is also in the document. After that, when the vendor invoice are received, the account payable clerk records the amount due in the account payable file and file the invoices in the vendor invoice file. So after that, record the account payable. The account payable record by the account payable clerk. So it is a manual operations. Account payable. After record account payable and file the invoices in the vendor invoice file. File the vendor invoice. the vendor invoice file. File it alphabetically. Name it as A. So we move to our first paragraph, first line of the first paragraph. Before S&S pays a vendor invoice, the invoice must be matched against the purchase order used to request the goods and the receiving report that the receiving department prepares. So all of these three documents must be matched. Match it in manual operation. Match purchase order, receiving report, and invoice. After that, we move to the next paragraph, paragraph 2. S&S pays all accounts within 10 days to take advantage of early payment discount. When it is time to pay a bill, the account payable clerk retrieves the vendor invoice, attaches the purchase order and the receiving report, and forwards the matched documents to Ashton Fleming. So we do this first. Retrieve vendor invoice, attach purchase order and receiving report. The account payable retrieve document. We must put it redundant. Purchase order. After that, put these three documents. This is receiving report because the account payable is attached this together, so we must redundant. We must put it together. This is vendor invoice. Okay, after that, forward the matched document to Ashton Fleming. Okay, because there is no space available, we must put it in on-page reference. These symbols means that it is there is a process in the same page. After that, Ashton reviews the document to ensure they are complete, prepares a two-part check, forward all the document to Susan and records the check in the cash disbursement journal. After that, we do this. Reviews the document to ensure they are complete and prepare two-part checks. So in the Ashton column, drag the connector, and the connector is on the Ashton column. Put it as 8. From Ashton's review document. Ashton review the document. We just Ashton review the document. After that, after that, Ashton prepares 2-part checks. Check is in manual operation. Yeah. After she prepare the vendor checks, then forwards all the document to Susan. Don't forget the 2-part checks. Forward it to Susan. After that, records the check in the cash disbursement journal. Record this check. Cash disbursement journal. Journal, the symbol of journal is like this. This is cash alright. So that Susan reviewed the document to ensure that they are valid payables and signs the checks. To that, review and sign checks. Process review, so it is in manual operations. After that, she forward the check to the vendor and returns the document and the check copy to the account payable clerk. forward the original copy to vendor. Check from to the vendor. Vendor is external agent. After that, return the document and the check copy to the account payable clerk. Return this. Return it to account payable clerk. On page cannot tell because there is not enough spaces. Name it as C. Sorry, C. After that, the clerk files the document alphabetic in paid invoice file. The account payable clerk C. After we done at the end of every month, the account payable clerk use the account payable ledger to prepare an account payable report that is forwarded to Susan at the every month. So in the account payable column, account payable clerk files the account payable ledger. Prepare the account payable ledger. So the ledger symbol is this. The account payable clerk prepare the ledger. And prepare it monthly. After that, forward it to Susan. Then forward the account payable report to Susan. report to Susan. Okay, after she is finished with the report, Susan file it chronologically to Susan column. D. Comparable report. Susan review. She is finished means that she review first. Review. Then file store it. Chronologically is by date. So that's all from me. Thank you.